As a professional driver, there is no question that fuel is your highest cost. Fuel Gauges tracks each fuel up, provides your 30, 60, and 90-day miles per gallon average, also tracks maintenance and modifications. Best of all, it is completely free to use. There is no excuse not to use your miles per gallon and start improving your fuel economy. Download the Fuel Gauges app today and keep your money in your pocket where it belongs. Let Fuel Gauges help you master the journey. Visit our website at letstruck.com or call Tribe Care Team at 855-800-FUEL. That's 855-800-3835.
Your money, your taxes, your truck, and your road to success in the trucking industry. This is Trucking Business and Beyond, the show that puts the money where it belongs, back in your pocket.
Good morning, you beautiful bunch of fuckers, and welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Monday, October 14th. It's time for a Monday free-for-all. Brent will probably be joining me in a little bit. He is at the ATA annual conference, and he had a presentation right now. So I think he's on stage right now, and he'll be joining us when he gets off that. I have a couple things I want to talk about today, but before we do any of that, I want to welcome in a special guest today, also from truckstop.com, Alan Alberto. Alan, good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Kevin?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing well. Happy Monday.
Yeah. You know, lately, the way the news reads, I try to take a break from all the news over the weekend because I have to read so much news all week to stay on top of things. And I try to stay away from it all weekend. And then when I wake up Monday, I'm not sure if it's Monday or if it's the end of the world.
I hear you there.
Yeah, the news is just...
Also, I'm taking a break, I think, just from like regular work and focusing on like life for a little bit over the weekend and the things that are important, like family and time, and then diving right back in Monday morning.
Yeah, exactly. It's like two different worlds anymore. You know, all weekend I was outside and just enjoying life and the weather was beautiful. And then I wake up Monday morning and I start reading headlines and it's like, what? Have people just lost their mind?
I hear you.
So is Brent playing hooky or is he really on stage somewhere?
Brent is actually at ATA this morning. I want to say the conference is hosted in Nashville this time around. So he is over the road and he will be joining us. I spoke to him earlier this morning. He said he would be running a couple minutes late, but probably joining close to the half-hour mark.
Got it. All right. Well, at least he's working. He's not just playing hooky. Sometimes he makes an excuse that he's on a plane and, you know, I know he puts a lot of miles on though.
He sure does. He's our face across the industry, definitely that relationship officer for Truck Stop. And I know right now it's the height of conference season for the fall. So he's pretty much back to back for the next coming week and has been for a little while, but for the remaining weeks all the way, I want to say through like almost up to Thanksgiving at conferences.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right. I think he puts on as many miles as most of our drivers do. He just does it in an airplane.
That sounds about right. Different, seeing it from a different lens. That's over right. The road versus in the sky.
That's right. Yeah, they call the middle of the country flyover country. We have to drive through it in this industry, though. Yeah, we spend a lot of time in the middle of the country.
Do you get over the road often these days, or are you pretty much out of the office or home?
You know, my studio is at home, so I get to spend most of my time at home. This year, all of my travel has been on airplanes, which is unusual. For a while, I just quit traveling on planes, period. And when I had an event, I would just take the coach and make a road trip out of it. The last time I was on the road was just about this time last year for the NASDAQ conference. And that trip ended up being I want to say it was almost 3 months by the time I got back home. It just kept getting longer and longer, and then one more thing would come up, and I'd say, "Well, I'm already out here. I might as well go do it." And yeah, by the time I got home, it had been a long time, and I really haven't been looking forward to leaving. Although, you know, our weather is about to change this week. We have beautiful summers here where it just doesn't rain all summer long, just fantastic weather. And then overnight, it just changes and it rains and drizzles and it's foggy for the rest of the winter. So in a month or two, I'll be tired of that. And we'll head out. Maybe this year well, it'll be next year, I guess, but we'll make our big trip around Matt's. Maybe Lisa and I will take off and we'll spend a month or two on the road.
That sounds good. So meeting at Mid-America Truck Show and then
Yeah.
continuing on from there.
Yeah. Or we'll plan stuff ahead of the show and then hit the show and then maybe do some things after. And we have some family in Florida. Maybe we'll head down there and see them and hang out. And when we're on the road, we try to meet with our partner companies. And for you guys, it's really easy because about 80% of the time we leave here, I'm heading east on 84 and we end up going right by your building. Couldn't be any more convenient.
Oh, in Boise?
Yeah. Yeah. I have,
Right by our building. Okay.
yeah, I spent almost a week sleeping in your parking lot. That was when we filmed all of the video for this course we're actually doing some work on right now.
Oh, I had no idea. That's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, it was kind of,
I love Idaho. I think our office is located in such a beautiful area of the country. I've been up a handful of times. I work remote, so out of Charlotte, North Carolina, but have been very fortunate to go up to Boise a couple of times. And I love it up there. It's beautiful.
you know, I think a lot of two states that I'm really just I love. I don't think they get enough attention. People don't realize how beautiful they are. Utah and Idaho. Those two states are absolutely beautiful, and I don't think a lot of people realize how nice it is and how many things there are to do. The other thing that really I really enjoy when I go to Boise, I like downtown Boise, and I don't like cities much. I tend to stay away from cities, go in once in a while. There are some cities that I really like. I used to like Portland and Seattle, but not anymore. Boise, though, kind of reminds me of, the earlier days of Portland and Seattle. Boise's got great food. That's one of the things I really like going for. They have some great restaurants downtown.
They really do. I also really enjoy right near Center City. You can do so many outdoor activities. I think the last time I was there was July or August of this year for a team meeting, and I had the opportunity of going whitewater rafting.
Oh, fun.
Just 30 to 45 minutes right outside the city, which was fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. I haven't done any rafting on the West Coast, I don't think. I used to do a lot when I was back east. Some of the West Virginia rivers and the New River in West Virginia and the Gauley, I think. Those were fun.
Haven't been up to West Virginia, but I'll have to check it out. It's always a great summer adventure.
Yeah. So we could talk like this all day. I suppose at some point we should probably talk about business, though.
We should.
Yes. So what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, so I appreciate you having me on. I think it's definitely my first time on your show, so thank you for having me. For listeners who don't know me, my name is Alan Alberto. I'm Director of Partnerships and Alliances at Truck Stop. So I'm a mini Brent Hutto, essentially maintaining a lot of our third-party relationships with folks like Kevin, right? And the Let's Truck partnership, as well as others across the industry. And just being a liaison for our customers and our partners to make sure that we continue to provide value and we're doing the good work out there that owner-operators need in order to be successful.
Alan, if somebody would have asked me if you were ever on my show, I probably would have said yes. It feels like you have been on the show. Maybe it's because you and I have spent a lot of time talking and working on things. It feels like you've been here before. I didn't realize you hadn't.
Yeah, definitely my first time. Hopefully the first of many.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. One of the things that I tell Brent this, Truck Stop is in a pretty unique position. I mean, you've grown into a really large company. I love the whole story of the company, the way it got started and where it is today. And you're in such a unique position because you touch really just about every aspect of logistics. And that's why Brent spends so much time at conferences. It's not just trucking or brokers. I mean, he's out with shippers and um, government agencies, and it gives him specifically such a great perspective on this industry to see it from so many different angles. And he spends time at these conferences where you do get to spend a lot of time talking to people and learning. And um, Truck Stop, and you're really in that kind of same position. How many different areas of logistics do you guys touch? Every time I'm talking to Brent, he's like out at some group I didn't even know existed.
Yeah, that's a really great point, and you're 100% correct, Kevin. Especially in today's landscape, the ever-evolving market of freight, and right now, like fraud being such a hot topic, that's expanded our reach into like the different parts of the industry that we need to be involved in, the different associations or organizations we need to be aligned with. So I'm really, I agree with you, and Brent truly attends a vast majority of these conferences, and then I'm fortunate and very grateful to be able to attend them as well. One of the ones most recently we were at is Travelers and Verisk has a conference that they do annually for a lot of their insurance customers, and bringing together the freight industry around fraud, double brokering, theft, identity theft. And the topics are so interesting, and really bringing Truck Stop at the center of that with the innovation that we're doing across our product to protect our customers, right? And provide a more trusted place across the freight industry.
It's interesting you brought up insurance there, and that's kind of what I was talking about. See, he goes to conferences. You guys work
Mhm.
with groups that, yeah, we all know we have insurance, but when I owned trucks, I would have never thought about going to an insurance conference, even if it was specifically trucking insurance. I would have thought it's just not a big enough part of what I do. I got invited to speak at one, and it was actually Nashville and Chattanooga. So I was with a group of speakers. There were 5 of us speaking, and I was with the group for the whole week. We started in Chattanooga. We were there for a couple days. Then we all drove together over to Nashville, and we spent a couple days there. It was one of the most interesting weeks I've had in trucking. The stories were incredible. Like I said, I would have never gone to one of these conferences other than the fact that I was invited as a speaker, but it was like at one point, it was like a John Grisham novel. One of the other speakers owned a fleet, about 100 owner operators that moves containers around New Orleans. And part of this conference, because it was insurance, was the staged accidents. And I didn't realize that New Orleans is ground central for that. It's been going on for years. This guy finally got tired of it and decided he was going to put an end to it. He started putting all kinds of camera systems on his trucks so they could see that these accidents were clearly staged. He's got some great footage. But by the end of this story, they brought the first case to court on a conspiracy for a staged accident. And it was crazy how in depth this was. The attorneys, the way this works is they would design an accident and then they would recruit people, and they don't want just a driver in the vehicle. They want a 9-passenger van because every person in the van now has a case. So that's how they stage these things. But they had the people set up, they had the whole accident like on paper in an email, and they were shopping it around to attorneys.
Oh, wow.
And then it got
And it's so
really,
interesting.
it is. And then it got really crazy. the lead witness. He was part of the conspiracy. This was the guy that recruited all the other people that were going to be in the vehicle with him. He ends up in a ditch with the bullet in the back of his head, execution style.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is a real
That's
case.
wild.
Yeah, yeah. It was like I said, it'd make an excellent John Grisham book.
And to be honest, you probably hear so many of these stories. And it's kind of sad to see like what happens as far as fraud and identity theft and just really across the industry. While we were together at a conference, hearing real life stories about cargo theft, the value of goods that get stolen, the type of goods, how creative these bad actors are in stealing, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, it is.
And so it is really interesting being intimate to it and having the opportunity to hear real life stories and then being part of the solution, right? Like, how do we, through technology, help drive innovation to protect the industry at large?
Right, right. You know, I have to believe that watching this whole kind of freight fraud thing unfold, because I've been in this industry a long time, and the term freight fraud was never even spoken for probably the first 3 decades I was in the industry, and now all of a sudden it's just everywhere. I have to believe that was pretty disruptive for Truckstop as a company. I have to believe you guys have a roadmap that's several years out. Software development is just like that. And to see how much time and effort you've had to put into this, that had to be a pretty big shakeup.
Yeah, and I think we're excited to be at the forefront of innovating for like freight fraud and advancement in protecting freight fraud. We launched, I want to say over a year ago now, our Freight Fraud Fridays series. So we would post different webinars or videos or tools that the industry could take advantage of that Truckstop was putting out. All of those are still available today on YouTube. So if anyone wants to go back and look at those videos, they're there. We continue to launch different ebooks and content that can be used across the industry for knowledge sharing and fighting fraud. And then from a partner perspective, we continue to align ourselves and work more closely with the insurance providers. We've done a lot of work even with the FBI to provide data and technology around securing freight fraud. I've also heard Brent more recently say that, to your point, Kevin, right? Freight fraud is a newer concept over probably the last 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And that it's not going to go away. Like, now it's here. It's a topic that's here to stay and something that we're going to continue to have to evaluate and innovate around.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It seemed like a lot of things we're dealing with today. It was there, it existed, but it was such a small part of the industry. We really didn't talk about it till COVID. And I remember at the beginning of COVID hearing somebody make this statement, and it kind of stuck in my head. And boy, was it true. The idea that emergencies or pandemics or anything that kind of shakes things up this much tends to really increase the speed of change. Like, things that were already coming, they're real. So like work at home, that's been going on forever, but boy, it really got accelerated during COVID. Freight fraud felt kind of the same way. It had always kind of been there in the background. We never paid much attention to it. And then with COVID and the lockdowns and everything going on, it just seems to kind of exploded right then.
You're right. We've definitely seen it across, well, Truckstop, and I believe Brent has spoken to this in the past, has had a securities and assurance team from day one, right? So we have an internal team that really monitors the load board and makes sure that the freight that's being posted is secure, and we really do a good job at even kicking off bad actors from the load board or any of our products. Recently, we put out statistics. I want to say it was posted on LinkedIn and our other social media channels, the amount of accounts that we've blocked due to bad actors or like poor behavior. So to align with that, and to your point, there's a graph that our product team has shared more recently when we attend conferences or even on webinars. And it shows that fraud has been around, right? It was just at a much lower volume that didn't turn a lot of heads. We've been fighting it. We've been removing bad actors from the board for years.
Right.
But it was something that was pretty low and pretty manageable. And then I want to say, if my memory serves correct from the graph, early 2020-ish, 2021, so like COVID time,
Right.
we saw that huge spike. I want to say it was a 300% increase
Wow.
in freight fraud.
Oh, yeah, that'll wake you up.
And then the cool thing about that graph, though, is looking at the data now. The industry has aligned to help each other out, right, and really work in partnerships to make sure that we're all communicating with each other, providing each other the necessary information to battle freight fraud holistically as a whole, so that we're all helping the industry and creating a more trusted marketplace of freight. And so we have seen over time the numbers start to come down and be, I don't know if it's the right word, but like maybe more balanced.
Yeah.
And as Brent says, right, like freight fraud's not going away, but at least like we're all aligned on getting a handle on it.
You know, one of the messages we've always worked with Truck Stop on, and I was always grateful that they allowed me to share this message, because it's really what I've said forever and ever. And it might even sound odd coming from a load board, but I've said the load board should not be your primary source of freight. That's just been my thought about a small carrier, 1 truck, 10 trucks. You should be building relationships with, it's probably going to be a broker. It's really difficult to build shipper relationships when you're that small. But the number for me, the magic number is like 3 to 5 good brokers should provide almost 95% of your freight. Because the best freight, we all know, it doesn't make it to the board. And if you want the best freight at the best rate, you do that through relationships. The load board serves so many purposes. The one, that's how you're going to find those relationships in the beginning, is through the load board. All the data that's there, we've been pushing the value of all that data for years and years. And then, of course, when you need a load, and that other 5 to 10% that you didn't get through relationships, you get through the load board. And I've just always thought that's the most efficient, productive way of using a load board. Had we all done that, and if that were being done much more, and I really believe it should happen far more than it does, this freight fraud thing would have had a really hard time taking hold. Because all of this freight fraud depends on the fact that the players don't know each other.
Yeah. And I've heard Brent say that as something similar to that as well, right? Where we would love for carriers, and we believe, right, like carriers to have direct relationships, right? That's
Right.
more profitable for them, and they're running dedicated lanes at that point. And the load board should be there to serve as an ally, right? Truck Stop is there as an ally and a partner to the owner operators in the industry, carriers at large, for when they need a backhaul, right? Or when they're running like deadhead miles, to make sure that there is freight that they're moving, so that they're making the most out of their time over the road.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
So I think
it's there.
just,
It
yeah.
And the other thing we always push, and I just don't think people appreciate it enough or use it enough. Really, it's almost the main reason for me to have a load board when I was doing this was the data itself. And I think it's probably one of the least used benefits of Truck Stop, and we push it all the time. We're going to talk about some technology today, right? The data and the technology is the value that I see. And then the ability to get a load when you need one, the ability to find other partners to partner with. There's so many different ways of using your products and services, but the biggest challenge is getting them to understand what those tools are, which is why we do shows like we're doing today.
I agree with you. Yeah, and the data is a huge part of what TruckStop provides to the industry. We've been around now for 29 years. Next year is our 30th anniversary.
Wow.
And over that time, we've worked with tens to hundreds of thousands of customers, right? All of which are posting freight, booking freight, posting trucks, looking at rates. So there's so much data that we're able to bring to the market, which allows our customers to be more successful.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what, I think we were going to talk about a specific product today, right?
We aligned on mostly talking about our freight matching tools.
Okay.
Freight match we encompass as the load board, right? And I think for carriers, it's important to call out, we have 3 different tiers of load board, which is basic, advanced, and pro. We also think that it's really important that carriers and owner operators have access to all the tools that they need in order to be successful.
Yes.
So there's not probably like one thing they need or like one approach to take. It might be a combination or a recipe of multiple. Our key, right, is on the load board or freight matching product. Our Load Board Pro really gives all the bells and whistles, and it has additional tools in there. I think things that I want to call out are it's updated in real time. So as soon as a load is posted to the board, carriers will see that. There's no lag time on the Pro tier.
Okay.
So they can book freight as soon as it gets posted. And time is money, right?
Absolutely.
So speed to the board, speed to seeing good freight get posted, the rates that get posted, all of that is extremely important.
Yeah,
Another key tool that I find really fascinating is our rates tool, so Rate Insights, which is a part of the product as well. Kevin, are you familiar with the rates tool or Rate Insights?
Yeah, but let's go over it. And again, one of the things I always want to stress is there are some really powerful tools in here, and some of them are really built for the small carrier and to help make them time efficient. One of the things I always talk about is when it comes to negotiations on freight, the small carrier, the owner operator, is always at a disadvantage. And we just have to understand that. I've talked about personality types and how that plays into all this, but a big part of it is just time. The broker is staring at freight rates all day long. It's what they do. That's their world. That they live in that world all day long. The owner operator, on the other hand, lives in that world for a couple minutes, then they have to go drive freight. I mean, that's what they do. So they're always somewhat at a disadvantage. And I love the fact that TruckStop has built these tools to help get some of those advantages back, so you can automate some of this stuff, right?
That's a great call out. So automating some of that, and especially for the owner operator, the carrier who's over the road, right? They're not in front of a desk or at a computer. Typically, they're using an in-cab solution, which is their mobile phone or a tablet that they can quickly access in the cab. So TruckStop offers what's our mobile app. It's called TruckStop Go. The mobile app's available at any app store, whether it's the Apple store or the Android store, to TruckStop Go. The login credentials are the same as like their mobile or desktop login. So they would just log in on their phone or on a tablet. And you're right, the automation is there to be able to pull all that data directly into the palm of their hands so that they can make quick, informed decisions to book freight and move freight faster, where they don't have time to be at a desk. They don't have time to be like truly analyzing and looking at data points, like maybe a freight broker may or a shipper may. Their focus is over the road, right? They're focused on driving. They're focused on picking up the next load, going and delivering, safety over the road, costs, right, for fuel and tires and insurance and all the other expenses that an owner operator or carriers experience. So through our platform, we definitely want to make sure that we're delivering on easy automated solutions so that a carrier is successful. So I definitely encourage mobile. So Truck Stop Go is huge.
Yes.
I think a piece to add to that is we just launched the app in Spanish. So for carriers who are Spanish speaking, they can also toggle over to the Spanish language app. So enabling their additional value and more success over the road.
Fantastic. So always something going on over there. So you had mentioned the rate product. Let's touch on that a little bit with the function and what, where, and when we would use that one.
Sure. So also found in the mobile app, you can pull up rate insights. And I have a quick story I want to share.
Sure.
About a motor carrier who I was on a call with. They had started using our product. We're probably like 30 days in. And I said, what do you love most so far? Or give me feedback. Like, what are your thoughts? You haven't used Truck Stop before. You're using our Load Board Pro tier. Give me your feedback. What are your thoughts? And this carrier specifically brought up Rate Insights and said, I was looking at a load posted across multiple load boards, and I knew it was the same broker, same load. And with the Rate Insights tool, I was able to see the estimated rates that Truck Stop was providing or suggesting, right, that I book at. So when they called the broker, they negotiated, right? And the broker, of course, started negotiating with the posted rate, same posted rate across the boards, which was relatively lower than what our rate estimate was giving. And they were actually able to negotiate and book at $800 more because of the Rate Insight tool.
You know, that's the kind of stuff Brett and I have been talking about for years and years, and the tools keep getting better and better and more sophisticated and easier to use and more powerful. And yet I still don't think not nearly enough people are using them. Help me out here a little bit. So there's a lot going on in the background, and that's typical of software. You know, we see the front end, we put in our information, we look to get an answer back out. There's a lot going on in the back of the rate tools. It's both backward and forward looking, right? It uses data from the past, but it also then predicts where the rate should be going forward, correct?
It does. So it's pulling in several data points and running it through machine learning in the back end to then we're able from that data to provide the rate estimate or like that insight trend. I know one of the data points that we pull in is from our own factoring business. So Truck Stop runs Truck Stop Factoring. So it allows carriers to get paid same day within 24 hours of a factored load. And since we own that arm of the business, we're able to buy back the receivables and since we know exactly what was paid on that lane, run that data into Rate Insights. So that gives us a better or more accurate prediction on what the estimate should be based on what was actually paid on given lanes across the US.
Yeah, you know,
so I know like that's one point of many.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first got active on X, it was Twitter again, and I hadn't really been ever active on Twitter up until that point, and I did it after Elon bought it, and I probably wasn't going to get censored again because I tend to get censored a lot. One of the first things I realized was that there was a lot of people that were, you know, what they wanted to say was that the rates and the information across the board in trucking, I mean, they made this giant conspiracy that these rates were all manipulated to make the owner operator believe that the rate was lower than it really should be. I tried to explain to people how ridiculous that statement is, but it was kind of a big deal. They actually went into this whole conspiracy that, you know, it was Truck Stop and Freight Waves, and they threw dad in there and everybody they could they were all conspiring to make the rates look lower, and I was helping them spread the word that this was. We had to have serious conversations about this, and from looking at the data and being there, there are way too many players in this market to ever manipulate anything. It's just not going to happen. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of carriers, tens of thousands of brokers, um, shippers. It's just way too many players to ever manipulate the data. Um, Once you get into all of these tools, I think it helps people understand how complicated this data is. One of the points you just talked about, the fact that any data coming out of load boards in the past, the majority of it wasn't necessarily, the rate wasn't based on the final transaction, because sometimes you don't have access to that final transaction. You have a posted amount. You don't always know what it gets negotiated to, but having that data now with the factoring, what actually got paid on this load, that gets us closer to real numbers. So the idea that the numbers weren't perfect, we all agreed to that. Of course, they're not perfect. They're not even close. Yes, loads get posted multiple times. We know all the things about the data, but I try to tell people the more time you spend in this data, the more you work with it, the more you will start to understand how powerful it is, even though it's not 100% accurate, and it's never going to be.
You're right. And I think that that's a really important call out, is we're getting closer to understanding data and being able to use it to understand trends, right? So by being able to pull back what was paid on a given load or lane, then we understand what's actually happening and getting closer to that transparency, right? So then through rate insights, we are able to provide a more accurate rate trend, and give an estimate to say, hey, when you pick up the phone and you're negotiating with that broker, here's what we're suggesting as your high, your low, and the estimate in the middle of where you might actually want to land. So it's just another tool. I think in addition to that, it's one tool in the tool belt for an owner operator, right?
Yes. Right.
I would also encourage using several tools. There are a number of great products in the market that encourage all of us to be better and better at what we do. So there's nothing wrong with looking across multiple sources.
Yeah, that what you just said on the fact that your product delivers to them those price points, the high, the low. We actually teach negotiation as part of our CMC, and we've been doing it for years. And I just try to teach owner operators and small carriers some quick tips on how to negotiate. And one of the biggest mistakes that they make over and over and over is they pick up the phone and they start to negotiate on a load that they've put almost no thought into. Maybe in the back of their head, they kind of know, well, the last time I was here on this lane, it was paid. Well, if the last time was more than an hour ago, things have changed already. And the last time was probably a month ago. And they don't necessarily understand the trends. It's entirely possible that last week this lane was in the bottom. The rates were just awful. But this week they're actually much higher, or they should be much higher going forward, just based on patterns in history. And we know that freight is seasonal, and we have hurricanes, and there's all kinds of things that disrupt patterns. And if you don't have access to up-to-date information, and the broker does, so just know when you're negotiating with them, they have this information right in front of them all day. If you're not working from a tool that has that not only up-to-date on what's been happening historically, but then uses that data to say, here's what should happen going forward, you just have no power to negotiate whatsoever. And I think this is why owner operators get so frustrated. They always feel like they're losing in the negotiation, but it's because they're not using the tools they should be using.
Yeah, I agree with you. Tools are so important, right? And just having additional tools. to have additional data points at your fingertips. I was looking through another key feature is, I think, what we would call it for Loadboard Pro. That's important in using not only like the rates and being able to see that data in real time. Well, I'll cover on that. Something you just mentioned is the most accurate data at the right time. So I recently saw, I want to say yesterday, I was reading through an email that came over with rate data over the last weeks and trends. And Brent provides updates to our internal teams on a weekly basis on just what we're seeing across the freight market week over week. And rates, I believe, went up because of the hurricanes, right? The impact that Helene has had, and then Milton on Florida. So rates have gone up over the last 2 weeks. And so I think, to your point, Kevin, having access to quick tools that create that automation for a motor carrier while they're over the road, so like a tool like Trucks Up Go and using in their cab, allows them to make more informed decisions and make more money.
Absolutely. Which is the whole point.
And it takes the guessing out, right? Like, they don't have to guess for like, how much more can I negotiate? Is it $50? Is it $200? Is it $800? It takes the guessing out, and it really allows them, like, hey, based on industry data and trends that TruckStop has access to, here's what we know or advise, right, that you should be negotiating towards.
I like that. Speaking of Brent, he snuck in on us this morning. Hey Brent, I've got some bad news for you.
I'm ready. Oh my goodness, what is it? Alan has supplanted me because he's vastly more interesting than I am.
That is exactly correct. How did you know?
Hey, look, I know the truth when I see it. So no, I was just no, thank you. Well, Alan's great. He's most importantly, Kevin, the thing that I love the most about Alan, he cares about this industry. He cares about truck drivers. He cares about owner operators, and you know, it's not hard to make good decisions when that's your goal. You know, so I'm just glad he's working for Truck Stop and not somebody else. But,
yeah, well,
so
I thought that he had been on the show before. I think it's just because I've spent so much time talking with him. It feels like he should have been. But now that he's on, you might have to think about your side hustle here. It might be at risk.
Well, I'm just telling you. I already told him earlier today. I said, look, if I go down a ball of flames, man, you got to pick up the mantle and keep running.
There you go.
So you just never know. You never know with life. But no, I'm here at the American Trucking Association Management Conference and Exhibition. Big long title for their annual conference for the American Trucking Association, which is it's pretty well attended. I just left Bob Costello, who's their chief economist, address to the industry on where the state of the industry is, and he basically has been saying the same thing, Kevin, that you and I have been saying for over a year, which is everything's kind of normal. There's going to be some wins in some places. 2025 it's probably going to look a lot better halfway through the year, especially on the housing side and on some goods purchasing. In other words, there's more goods purchasing, the more truck freight we have. And because he's looking at like industrial sectors and stuff like that. And so,
right.
But in general, we'll see some increases next year. Spot rates certainly will continue to move up because they've been so far below what's needed for the industry. But so overall, he's not pessimistic. But he said, you know, that as the Fed continues to cut rates, then you'll see overall optimism grow. But just like everything else that we deal with the government, anytime the government makes a decision on something, then the effect on the population, all of us consumers, is slow. And you don't want it to be fast. It's just kind of slow. So expect those things to change. So in general, everybody's pretty optimistic here because freight continues to expand. Some capacity is leaving. In other words, some trucking companies are going to different parts of the market or just going back to maybe whatever else they were doing before they decided to buy a truck in the pandemic. So then that's kind of the update on what's going on. And American Trucking Association, great association. Obviously, they lead us with the talking to the government, and they help us tremendously when it comes, you know, like legislation things. We're fighting for the right things, and just in general, pretty optimistic here.
Oh, that's good. Hey, I want to address the ATA thing
Yeah.
because
Yes, sir.
in my tribe, sometimes warning bells goes off when you hear those letters. And I've tried to
Sure.
get people to understand what this is. The ATA, and I believe there are people in our industry that somehow believe the ATA is some pseudo government agency or they have something to do with the government. You just hear that.
They do not.
They do not. They are a private
Yeah.
association, and associations form in order to serve their members. That's their point.
Mm-hmm.
The ATA formed to serve their members, which are large trucking companies. That is who they want. That's who makes up the organization. That's what it exists for. So of course they're going to lobby for things that benefit that group. And there's always been this animosity that, well, the ATA never fights for what the driver wants. Well, it's not that they never do, but it's kind of not their job. It is in a sense because the members have lots of truck drivers, but there's also lots of other things going on when you run a business that big. So there's always this animosity. My point has always been, look, they exist. They're there to serve their members. You can get pissed off and scream about everything they do, or you can just observe and learn. And again, I was, talking to Alan this morning about Alan and Truck Stop, that you touch so many different aspects of logistics. It's just mind-boggling to me. Some of the groups you go out to conferences, I've never even heard of them, but then I understand how they affect logistics. It's better to just take away all the animosity over these groups that are maybe opposed to you, and just pay attention and learn. We can learn a lot by watching what the ATA does. We don't have to like what they do, but they're not. They're there to serve their members. They're not evil. Whatever anybody might think, they're not evil. They're there to serve their members.
Thank you for saying that, and I feel the same way. I think it's kind of like when I talk to my kids about voting in the presidential election. I said, don't look at whether you like the candidate's personality or whether you like the way they talk or their whatever. Look at their policy. You always look at their policy because that's what we have to live with. So the ATA fights for a lot of policies that independent owner operators would probably be very happy about. And so yes, they certainly represent their membership, and there are some owner operators and small fleets that are part of the ATA, but predominantly. The ATA is mostly impacted by the larger fleets, medium and large fleets that contribute their membership dues to this association. But I will say that it's been my experience over the 27 years of being around the ATA is that they do fight for and I'm just going to say this in general, the right things for trucking. And so we're trying to keep trucking strong in the United States and to fight off unneeded regulations or unneeded legislation like 85 out in California. And so in general, what I would say is look at the policy, no matter whether it's the ATA or whether it's OOIDA, and figure out how that's helping you in your business. But just like you and I talked, and Alan, I heard Alan mention this before about the data, is, man, there's great resources out there that put out information. Just go read it, go look at it and go, okay, well, given that, how do I need to adjust my business? Because you're not in control of the government. I'm not in control of the government. The owner operator is not in control of the government, but you are in control of your business, and how you adjust to it is really where the rubber meets the road and where you can figure out how to make the best out of it. So that's been my sort of take on the last, more than 25 years of kind of watching trucking and being around it. And now at Truck Stop, we're able to really fundamentally help owner operators. And that's why we listen to them and go, what do you need us to develop that helps you create better parity or better balance between you and the broker in the negotiation, or you and the shipper in the negotiation? And that's really what we're out for every single day.
I think an important call out to add to that, and kind of reiterate, Brent, what you just shared and what Kevin shared earlier, is there are a number of associations out there that are here to help the owner operator be more successful and be a community voice across the industry and provide advocacy. So Kevin, I heard you say earlier, you mentioned going to the NASDAQ conference. Brent, you're at ATA. You also mentioned OOIDA. There's also TCA. There's a number of different associations out there who are there to help and to do good work. I think it's up to the owner operator themselves to do a little bit of research and align on like where do you believe that your voice will be heard best, and then join those groups. And it can be multiple, it could be all of them.
I agree. And one of the groups that I've encouraged owner operators and small carriers to join, because I find great resources, are the state trucking associations. Nobody hardly ever talks about them. There was a time where when I was trying to get some experience as a speaker, you could always count on the state trucking associations as long as you didn't want to get paid. Most of them don't have a whole lot of money, so if you went to speak there, you were probably doing it on your own dime. But it was a good way to get experience. But what it turned out to be was it was a place where I learned a lot of things about the industry that I never knew before. I think that
you're right.
Yeah, you just get exposed to so many things that you're not going to get exposed to if you don't go out and do these things.
Well, if you want sort of representation as a independent owner operator that owns one truck or two trucks or five trucks or something like that, then the state association is a great opportunity for you, because most people, and I know that some truckers may know this and some may not, Kevin, is that all the state associations are part of the ATA. Now they exist
Correct,
independently,
right.
but they're part of the ATA. And so if you really want representation, man, go see the head of your state association. I know in Alabama, the guy that runs the association, he depends on their operators all over the place. There's a guy named Mark Colson. He does a great job in representing the Alabama need for, what goes on in trucking. They're kind of like a representative from your congressional district, where they're representing your interests, but they don't know your interests unless you call and tell them.
That's a good point. That's exactly right. And there's just a lot of great resources and a lot of great people to be. Think about this, especially if your goal is to build a fleet. Many state trucking associations are made up of members that started very small trucking companies and built them into fleets. Aren't those the people you should be spending time with?
For sure. Community, right?
Yeah.
Well,
connecting with other people who've done it before.
Yeah. I'd say
like
learning
from their experiences.
Yeah. There's two ways. My dad always told me, Kevin. He said, "Look, you can learn two ways. You can learn from your mistakes, or you can learn from other people's mistakes. It's kind of up to you. Which how much more pain do you want? Your own mistakes are much more painful. Learning from somebody else's is usually painful, and there's less time involved in it."
Yeah,
he
that's
said,
a good point.
Learning from experts is, usually they'll just talk about, hey, here's the things not to do. Here's the things that are anti the success of your business, but don't do those things. So I'm always open to that when it comes to what you need to learn in any marketplace.
Absolutely. All right. Let's go back to the freight matching product now that we've got Brent here. Let's kind of go through what this freight matching product is all about, how we would use it to our advantage.
Yeah. So Brent, I was sharing that a key to freight matching, especially for the owner operator, is an in-cab solution, right? They don't have a lot of time in front of a desk or to be looking through the data points. So facilitating Truck Stop Go, going mobile via the phone or on a tablet, is extremely important for efficiency. We also talked about Rate Insights as a tool that's embedded to be able to negotiate rates, make more money while over the road.
Right.
I think another key feature that I wanted to call out, especially on the mobile app, the Truck Stop Go, is load alert notifications. So you could enable notifications, so a pop-up coming directly to your phone on dedicated lanes that you run regularly. So that means as soon as that load gets posted, you get alerted and delivered right to your phone, or essentially the palm of your hand, so that you can book and go deliver and make more money.
Yeah, for sure. I think about, and all those things are great technologies and data points. I think also the thing that is, to me, is something that's kind of underutilized is what's called lane densities. In other words, if you're in city A, you need to know how many other trucks are competing against that piece of freight you're looking at. So if you've got 40 trucks competing on it, you better settle on a price super fast. All right, if you want that piece of freight. If you've got 3, then you probably can negotiate a lot harder because there's less trucks competing on it, which means, and by the way, the brokers all know this. They know the lane densities,
That's right.
the number of trucks that are in a lane. So arm yourself, Mr. Owner Operator, arm yourself with knowing how many people you're competing against, because, look, trucking, one of the things I love about trucking is that we all love each other, man. Every trucker loves every other trucker. We're this great sort of fraternity community that we're all together on. But in the end, we're still in a competitive environment that in today's market, there's a lot more people competing for freight that's out there than normal. And so if you're going to be competing in the marketplace, then make sure you know what you're competing against.
Yeah, absolutely. I just saw, I was talking, I think it was last year when the number came out, the cost for the average cost for a fleet per mile to run their trucks, and it was $2.28 a mile, which is pretty high.
It's higher. The ATA just released something. I think it was 20 cents above that.
I thought I saw something this past week that somebody put out as like 270 something a mile now.
Yeah. 270. I think you're right. You're jogging my memory here. I've been traveling too much. I think it was 272. Yeah. 272. Yep, that's it. Dude, that owner operators ought to be able to eat the fleet lunch with this. Just eat, because they can operate so much cheaper.
Yeah.
Less costly. I don't like the word cheap.
No, you're right.
So,
a lot more efficiently. And we learned from your book recommendation, Economics in One Lesson, that's the only real way to create new wealth, is to be productive and efficient.
Well, I knew it was going to come back up.
That's right.
That book, I got more people. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. What about that book?
No, I was just going to say, I've been talking. I was talking to Bob Costello, who's the chief economist for ATA, and I was talking about the book. He goes, I don't know that book. He goes, I got to read that book. I'm thinking, this is a legendary economics book.
Yeah.
And I've talked to 3 economists. I've talked to 3 economists in the last 3 months, and they don't know it. I mean, it was written back in the 60s. So I'm just amazed
40s.
at how many people. I mean, I stumbled on it, and I'm just a business guy out there. So
the original.
Brent, what's the name of the book again?
It's Economics in One Lesson. Brent, it was the original copy was written in 1946.
Oh, that's it. There you go.
Yeah.
46.
It was rewritten in the 60s and then updated again in 77, which is the version that I just read was the updated from 77. But yeah, 1946.
Right.
And yet it explains so many things so well. And it fits right in with what we talk about on this show all the time. Rates are what they are.
Yes,
the best we're going to do on the rate side is understand rates. That's why we talk about all these tools to help them understand it. Build good relationships. That's probably the number one thing you're going to do to get a better rate. Is build good relationships. But then once you've done that, the market's going to do what the market's going to do. Rates are going to be based on supply and demand. It's why we spend so much time on this show and the CMC and everything I do, hyper focused on expenses. Because that's the only way, efficiency. It's the only way to generate new wealth. Everything else is wasting money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure it is. I mean, I can't tell you how important efficiency is. And efficiency, you can look at it. I know some truck drivers go, I want to drive, kind of want to drive, or they think faster speed is going to get me more loads because I can run more miles and all that. Although there's a much higher cost vector when it comes to running outside of the efficiency ratio of your vehicle. And but I just think about efficiency standpoint from the standpoint of being able to grow your business, because every business grows when it's operating the most efficiently, because you can take on more opportunities, you have more cash flow, things work better in the business. Efficiency is the key to expanding your business. And I know most truck drivers, most owner operators don't always look at it that way, but efficiency is the key. And sometimes efficiency might mean, it might mean driving a little faster in very, very certain occasions. But
Oh,
for the most part, it usually means maximizing the consumption of what your cost is.
yeah, absolutely. And we talk about that. It never once have we said you should drive 55 everywhere you go. That would not be a true
No,
statement.
not at
That's
all.
not
Yeah,
the most efficient, not the most productive, because we want both things. We want efficiency and we want production. And in our world, production is more miles. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. When you are, being productive, it means you're putting in more miles. But you have to balance that, and it's a really tricky balance against your number one
right.
cost, which is fuel. So we talk about this all the time, but it's probably the biggest criticism I've taken over the years. Oh, all you ever talk about is expenses. What about rates? Well, rates are what they are. I mean, the strategies
They
around rates
sure
are
are.
pretty simple and pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
And I always try to get people to look at times like right now. If
yeah,
you're so
yeah, no
focused
doubt.
on the rate and you have to get a certain rate, what do you do when that rate just doesn't exist? You can't
Right. That's right.
change that. These rates are what they are. They're going to be here a while. You just told us we may see some
Yeah.
things look a little better in
You'll see some.
2025, but nothing
Yeah.
where it's not going to be a
Yeah.
barn burner. We're
Well,
not going to be
yeah.
breaking any records in 2025. I think it's still going to
Well,
be a very difficult year.
well, the market is still correcting. You notice I didn't say it's down. It was recession. It's just correcting back. So
Right.
pay attention to that. Kevin, I have to run. There's another presentation starting that I have to be in, and yeah, I'm trying to gain more information for owner operators. So thanks again for having me on. Alan's welcome to stay around if he wants to, but
Yeah, I just
again, Kevin, thank you for everything you're doing to help owner operators, my brother.
thank you guys. I just looked at the clock. I'm going to cut both of you loose. Thanks for everything today. That hour went fast.
Yes. Thank you for having us today,
Talk to you
Kevin.
soon.
All right.
See ya.
All right. Talk to you guys soon. Thanks. All
All
right.
right.
Phone
Have a great
lines are
day.
open. It is time for our Monday free for all. We have no calls. So I'm going to have to go back and look at my notes and see what I had while we're waiting for some calls to come in. 855-950-3835. Hit that call now button on your app. And while we're waiting for those calls, here's a couple things interesting from the news this morning. I have been talking about Nikola and the Nikola hydrogen electric truck and the Nikola electric truck. I've been talking about this since the very first day that they released the truck. And I'm thinking it was back in maybe 2017, 2018. And when they did their first big press release and they rolled out their website, I went in and I just tore their website apart and I made the statement, this isn't even for real. This is vaporware. This truck is never going to happen. It happened more than I thought it would. John Walco and I used to talk about this all the time. And then there was a time where it looked like they were kind of getting their stuff together. And we said, okay, maybe it wasn't vaporware. We kind of gave them a break. Well, here we are again, and this company is in real trouble. I don't think this company is going to survive. Here's just some of the recent news. This past Wednesday, they laid off 135 employees. That's about 15% of its workforce. They're always short on cash, and they can't really sell stock right now because their stock is taking a beating. They are heavily leveraged, and they did on June of this year. I talked about this when this happened. I've talked about stock splits and companies that are doing really well and their stock price keeps going up will do what's called a stock split so that their stock stays affordable. It's more of a psychological thing than anything. So here's what happens. Let's say that a stock reaches $100 a share. That's not outrageously expensive, but it's getting up there. a stock reaches $100 a share, and some people, maybe it's because they like to buy 100 shares at a time or whatever it is. So they have a budget that they're willing to spend. So what a company will do is, let's say they're at $100, they do a 2-for-1 split. What that means is, if I had 10 shares at $100, I'm now going to have 20 shares at $50. So the price of the stock gets cut in half, but now I have twice as many shares. It didn't change me when I already owned the stock, but now it makes the stock a lower price. So there's this thought that more people will buy it. That's what stock splits are used for. On the other hand, you can look at, some stocks that never ever split, or very seldom, like a Berkshire Hathaway, that, you pay hundreds of thousands of dollars per share. Well, Nikola did something that isn't as common. They did a 1-for-30 reverse stock split. So in a reverse stock split, they're doing the opposite. They're increasing the cost of the stock, decreasing the number of shares you would get. So you're going to have less shares. Companies do this when their stock price is falling so fast that they're going to get delisted off the indexes. So they were about to get delisted off I'm pretty sure they're on the NASDAQ. So they had to do this reverse stock split, but that's never a good sign. They did finally, there was a little bit of good news. They actually sold 88 fuel cell trucks. Now, they sold them wholesale, and I think I have some prices here. This is absolutely insane. So they sold 88 trucks, but here are the numbers. Nikola's cost of making and selling the Class 8 Tre, TRE, that's what they call this thing, Tre cab over truck, is estimated at more than $1 million each. The Nikola truck is costing over $1 million to build each truck. The trucks they sold were $380,000. How does anybody think that this makes any sense whatsoever? $1 million plus truck. They're only able to sell it for $380,000. And those people are screwed, because you can't make any money with a $380,000 truck. And yet it sounds like that's about a third of what it actually costs to build. I get it. The more of these things we build, the more the cost comes down. But we're just not even in the ballpark with these numbers. I had a couple other things. Here's another one on efficiency. The Shell Starship truck, we're up to 3.0 now. This is that truck Shell took over. I actually talked to the guy that started this truck. He's absolutely brilliant when it comes to fuel mileage. Then Shell kind of bought the project out. He's been working on trucks like this since the 70s, actually. But Shell bought this and turned it into a pretty big program. They keep doing updates. This latest update was actually a natural gas X15. And I read probably 4 reports on this run where they didn't give you the miles per gallon. They did this calculation, and I understand the calculation. There's nothing wrong with it. They actually did a how much freight can be moved per emissions kind of thing, and they claimed these big increases over diesel fuel. And I thought, well, okay, that's great information, but tell us what the real fuel mileage was and the cost. So, because that's what's really important to us. If you're operating a business, we have to know the numbers on this. All we really got out of this, and I guess I could go look up natural gas cost, but it turns out this truck got, and they're very generic about this, it just says 9 miles per gallon, not 9.23, just this really round, oh, it got 9 miles to the gallon. Well, and then this makes me a little crazy. And then they say a typical diesel truck averages 6.4. Yeah, but there's a problem here. You're using two different fuels at two different costs. So I wish somebody would have put the cost numbers in here, but they didn't. I've read every article I can find about it. I don't think anybody's going to get excited about 9 miles to the gallon and the cost of this truck and the cost of the natural gas and how difficult it is to get. We are nowhere near making these kind of trucks viable. Let's get to some phone calls. If you want to join us, 855-950-3835. It is a free-for-all. Hit that call now button on your app. Whatever it takes, jump in here and join me. Let's get started in Ontario. Kurt, welcome.
Hello, Kevin. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I
What
have
can I
a
help you
question
with?
about what oil you think I should be running in my Series 60. I know the formulations have changed to accommodate the new emissions, and I've been using T6 forever, and what do you think I should use? Stick with T6, or is there something better?
I like T6, especially on some of the older engines. If you're running T6, how much oil does it consume when you use T6?
It doesn't even use a gallon in 10,000. It's still really tight.
Nice. Yeah, I would just keep using the T6. It's a great oil.
Okay. Yeah, I've been really happy with it. I've been driving this truck for almost 19 years.
Oh, congratulations.
And it just runs great.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
How many miles total now?
I'm at 2.7 million.
Wow. That's incredible.
I know.
I love that.
Yeah, it had a rebuild at 700,000. So I've got 2 million on the rebuild.
Wow.
Yeah, still going strong too every day, Kevin.
That is incredible. Boy, talk about being efficient. Do you know how much money that truck has made you?
This truck has changed my life.
No doubt.
I drive between 50 and 55. I'm in direct right now, cruising along, nice and easy. This truck's been fantastic. It's a 99 Classic Freightliner.
That's a gold mine right there.
It sure is. I hope to keep it for another 5 years. If all keeps going well, I'll be able to retire right out of this.
Boy, when you retire, that thing needs to go in a museum somewhere.
Well, I think about taking the fifth wheel off, and I'll pull my Harleys down to Florida for a winter vacation with it.
There you go. That's an even better idea.
Well, thanks a lot, Kevin. Thanks for everything you've done. You've been a big help on keeping this truck efficient throughout the years of my trucking career.
Excellent. Excellent. Congratulations. Love to hear stories like that. All right, let's go to Texas. Bill, welcome.
Yes. Did you see the video on the SpaceX launch and capture of the
I did. I just watched that this morning. Man, that was incredible. So I've talked about this, the fact that I grew up with the space program, NASA going to the moon. I was 6 when we landed on the moon the first time. So I remember what a big deal that was watching that. And then I watched and our space program was clearly a success, getting to the moon, doing all that. The space shuttle program, I was never all that impressed with. I know we learned a lot with it, but it seemed like that program went on for a long, long time, and we really didn't get as much out of it as we could have or should have. The belief always was that this space exploration is so big that only the government could do this. And it turns out that's not true. And not only is the government not the only one that can do it, they have now been shown how it should have been done a long time ago. NASA has never been able to return their rockets. We just dump them out in the ocean, and it costs us a fortune that way. And here, one guy. I mean, really, Elon is the guy. Sure, he's he hires a lot of people, but it's mostly Elon. And I was really impressed when they just brought him back to the pads and landed him. They just brought. Isn't this the biggest rocket? So that's the one. I think this might be the biggest rocket anybody's flying right now. They brought this thing back and landed it like almost on a launch tower kind of looking thing.
Yeah, the launch tower just grabbed it.
Yeah, that was very impressive.
No beef ups for landing.
Yeah, that was very, very impressive to watch.
It's just totally amazing.
It is, and I don't want to sound like a Elon Musk fanboy, but you have to know that we are watching history. That 100 years from now, people will talk about Elon Musk the way we talked about Edison and other people like that, or Henry Ford, or the things that he is creating. It almost doesn't seem possible. He's running like 5 separate companies that are all doing incredible things that almost nobody else can do.
Yes, great.
I mean, the whole SpaceX thing is pretty damn incredible. Just SpaceX alone, what they've accomplished, and now we've had to bail out NASA because their astronauts, would have been stranded in space for a very long time because Boeing failed. And who's going to come and rescue them? Elon. When we can't get internet to rural areas, even though they've allocated almost $5 billion to get people in rural areas internet, they've connected nobody, even though they have all this money. And it turns out that Elon can basically do it in about a week's time at very, very little cost compared to what they were spending. I mean, and the Boring Company, nobody even talks about that one. That's a pretty big deal, what he's doing with Hyperloop tunnels.
Yes, really great. Well, I did have a question.
Sure.
I am turning 70 next year, and I am retiring.
Congratulations.
I actually don't do trucking. I have a software company.
Okay.
And it's set up as a LLC, and I'm going to have my son run it.
Okay.
Question is, next year, I was going to essentially give him the company for a modest amount of cash, but at the end of the year, I'm going to have like $30,000 of income. So if he becomes owner on January 1st, I know he can pay me money, but how do I account for that as income?
So
on my tax return?
You broke up a little bit there. You have $30,000 of what? I didn't hear that part.
Receivables.
Okay.
Regretfully, I do some work for some large companies, which are net 90 days.
Oh yeah, I'm well aware.
Yeah.
A lot of times people in trucking don't understand that. They think it's horrendous that they have to wait 30 days to get paid. Try waiting 90 days to get paid, which is not unusual in many businesses. So I want to go back. So I want to be clear on the question. So you are selling the company to your son, but it's a pretty modest amount, right?
Right.
Now, my guess is whatever that amount is, you're going
And
to have to pay.
And he doesn't have the cash at this point. I mean, until he runs the company for a while, he isn't going to have the cash to pay.
So the company
it
technically is still going to be your company. Yeah. He's running it, and the money he makes from running it, he's going to cash flow to buy the business from you.
Right.
Okay. So there are some things we need to talk about there, but then I want to get to the specific question about the receivables. Give me the question again on the receivables.
Okay, we bill monthly for maintenance and hosting of websites.
Right, got it.
And I have firms at 30. So when I do my December billings, all that money's going to come in January.
Correct.
And my plan was for him to be the official owner starting January 1.
Okay, but are you financing the deal then? Is there going to be a note that he has to pay off over time?
Not at this point. I'm just aiming to do it informally there.
Well, part of the problem is.
So I don't know. Do I have to do a note?
Well, yes. Part of the problem with this is informal kind of arrangement is usually it makes a mess of taxes because taxes are never informal. We have to be very, very clear about what's happening for taxes. So if you say on January 1st he owns the company, then there had to be a sale price. Do we know what that is?
Still debating, probably like 40,000 plus the receivables.
40,000 plus so he's got to pay the receivables.
Yeah, when he gets the money, I feel it's mine.
Correct. So he's not getting the receivables that are on the books on the day he gets the company, and that's fine. That still comes to you. So the 40,000 then is the purchase price. The receivables really don't have anything to do with this. So the 40,000 is the purchase price. My guess is, like a lot of companies, you probably started this with almost no cash in the very beginning, right?
That is correct.
So you have really what we would call, and I'm assuming, I'm not looking at tax returns, we'd have to go back. This stuff actually gets fairly complicated. We have to know what your basis was in building this company. And it may be zero. And it may be zero because
essentially it's zero.
Yeah. And that's not uncommon with small companies because we cash flow the company. It's not like we walked in and said, here's $50,000. I'm starting this company. We just started doing some work. And then eventually somebody paid us some money and then we cash flowed and we just built from there. And you have deducted on your tax returns all of that money you've already spent to start the business because it was all cash flowed. So your basis is zero.
Yeah, I was right.
So right off the bat, the first tax implication we have is you will have tax on a $40,000 long-term capital gain. That's your first, because that's what your basis is zero. You sold it for 40,000. That is a full gain. It's long-term because it was more than a year, so it's a fairly low rate, depending on your other investments. But that's what you're going to face right off the bat is a tax on that 40,000. Now, if this is totally up to you, you could choose to only pay the tax as you receive the money from him. If you are the one financing this, and you are, he's not writing you a check for $40,000 on January 1st, right?
That is correct.
So let's say in 2025, he pays you $10,000. Well, then that's your gain for that year. So you can spread your gain out over the time it takes him to pay this. And I'm not.
I don't think he's going to. I think he's going to pay it all in 2025.
Okay. Well, then you would end up with that full gain on your tax return for 2025 then.
And you just call it
capital gain.
Capital gain,
It's
and
a long-term
sort of
capital gain.
Okay.
Now, one of the things I would really encourage you, do you have a good accountant that's been working with you on this business?
Well, I have a mother-in-law who's a enrolled agent.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. That helps a lot. I really like enrolled agents because they really, really focus on tax law and not necessarily accounting, which is more important for a business your size. Have you talked to them about any of this yet?
Well, she was talking about remaining an owner of the business, partial owner of the business, and bring it in on a K1.
Bringing what in on the K1?
The income on the K1 of.
I'm not really sure what that means. So this person does have ownership in this business now?
No,
Well, when you said they plan on staying owner.
no, I'm talking myself staying in it.
Oh, where did that come from? How would that work? Bill?
Would we make it an installment sale essentially?
Well, no, if you make an installment sale, well, it depends on how we structure this, but a typical installment sale, I'm going to own the business on
Did I
January.
lose you?
Well, you did for a minute there. I think I've got you back. And that's why I asked is if he becomes the owner on January 1st and you're holding the note, you are no longer an owner. You sold the company and
Can't hear
held the
you.
financing. That's two different things happening there. He could have gone out and got a loan from somebody else and wrote you a check for $40,000, and then he's clearly the owner. But if you loan him the $40,000 and he gives it back to you, he technically is still the owner of the business. You could do some sort of lease arrangement where while he's paying for it, you are still the owner, but that would be a whole different way of structuring the deal. Here's what I'm going to recommend. I'm going to recommend that you get the EA here and you sit down with an attorney and get this written up right. There's so many ways that you could screw this up, and it's worth it to pay $500 to $1,000 to an attorney and the EA to do some work and make sure you're doing this correctly. Uh-oh, I think we lost him. All right, hopefully he heard that. I would not do this deal without an attorney. These informal deals like this end up being a tax disaster because nothing about taxes is informal. We have to account for everything. And there are ways that we can arrange this and set this up so that we can minimize the taxes, or at least figure out a better way to do this so the tax bill isn't as much of a burden. Let's go to Minnesota. Matt, welcome to the program.
Hey, good morning, Kevin.
What's on your mind today?
Talking about taxes, I've been meaning to call for probably over a month, and I haven't heard anybody else mention it, but per diem changed.
Yeah,
as of October 1st.
I had a bookmark on that somewhere, and then I forgot to talk about it too.
Well, I mean, it's not like you got to change anything.
Right.
You don't need to know it. Your accountant should know this. But yeah, so it went from $69 a day to $80 a day.
Yeah, it's a big jump, but this is pretty typical. They do this. This number changes based on inflation. So it's not unusual that we see a big jump this year because the cost of food has gone way up.
Yes, it has.
Now here's where
luckily
I see a lot of accountants who
But
even get the rate correct, but the one thing they get wrong is the fact that this number, in my experience, always changes on October 1st for the fourth quarter. And it
Yep.
has to do with the government's fiscal year. You get to claim this $80 for the last quarter of this year, and so many people miss that.
correct. Yep. So yeah, you got the first 3 quarters of the year are going to be the $69 a day, and
Right,
fourth quarter is going to be $80 a day.
right. And I see just a lot of people miss that one. Since we're talking about it, what the hell's going on with Trump and the tax code? Has he lost his mind? He's just throwing stuff out
I
every day. It's like, well, we're not going to tax this. Oh, we're not going to tax this. Well, we're going to give a bigger deduction for this. We're going to allow interest on your car loan. Wait a minute. The whole point of his last tax law change was to simplify things. He took away all the standard deductions and instituted the double, or he took away the itemized deductions and put in
Yep.
the double standard deduction, basically. Well, now he's going back and bringing
made
back
everything simple.
some of the itemized deductions again.
Yep.
If he wants
My-
to make
My only hope,
this big of
and
a
I know
change,
this is not the case.
no, I know what you're going to say. And if he wants to make this big of a change to the tax code, then get behind the fair tax.
Yeah, he's going to throw all these things out there, which, like I say, this is not what he is thinking. I'm positive he's just doing this for votes.
I think he is. I think that's absolutely what this is. This is pandering for votes. He's just throwing goofy stuff out every week.
Yep. But yeah, my only hope is he could wait, and say, well, look at how crazy all this is, and why don't we just go to the fair tax and make it and do away with all this?
That'd be a good way of
stuff
selling it. Yeah, if that's what he does. But I this, like, every week it's something new. Now, like I said, he's bringing back being able to deduct interest on your car loan. Well, why? Why would we want that back? That's just it makes no sense whatsoever.
And how many people are even going to itemize anyway that's going to matter?
That's the other thing. It's not that simple either. You can say that if you're looking for votes, but explain to us how that is going to work. What is the standard deduction? And if the standard deduction is already in the $20,000 range or wherever the hell we are now, nobody's going to itemize anyway. So why would we bring these rules back? Because if you bring the rules back, you got to bring forms back. It just complicates things. It adds to the cost again. This just makes me crazy this time. I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, because most people don't even get the home deduction.
Correct.
Because the only way to claim that is you have to have enough itemized to exceed the standard deduction.
Right.
And since he doubled the standard deduction, almost nobody meets the number to exceed that. So nobody's actually claiming any of these.
Which was a good thing in a sense. I'd rather see, a nice simple fair tax. But if we're going to have this income tax system that we have, yeah, just go ahead and put in a big enough standard deduction that we don't have to mess with the deductions themselves, the itemized, or just eliminate all of that and lower the tax rate.
Well, yeah, even the flat tax would be an improvement from what we have. But it really doesn't solve any of the problems of the tax code.
It doesn't. I'm not a big fan of the flat tax, but I like the fair tax. Let's think about how unfair even a double standard deduction is. Let's say the double standard deduction, just for the fun of it, is $25,000. And we know there are people who would not have had a single itemized deduction, none, and yet they get $25,000. Well, what if I spent $24,999 on those items but I don't get any more of a deduction than the person that spent zero.
No.
That's a horrible system.
But
Now, I like it better than all the goofy itemized deductions and all the rules and all the forms and all the paperwork. That was even worse. But this really is still not fair. I hate even to use that word. It just doesn't even make sense. Why one person who spends nothing gets a $25,000 deduction, and I spent $25,000 and I get a $25,000 deduction.
Well, yeah, I think just completely do away with all deductions.
Yes.
And lower the tax rate.
Correct.
Because, I mean, even the home mortgage that has been around for I don't know how long, a very long time.
Long as I've been doing tax returns.
Yeah. Why is that a special tax deduction?
Well, you know why it is?
Compared to any other thing you spend money on.
Yeah, and here's why. And
to
this
promote
makes
home
me
ownership.
Correct. And I hate using the tax code to influence behavior. And they do it all the time, and it makes me crazy. They did it to encourage people to buy a house. Well, that's using the tax code to change somebody's behavior. If they want to buy a house, let them buy a house. It shouldn't have anything to do with our taxes. And then when they start talking about it, and you know, there's going to be a push for this now because they're talking about health and highly processed food. Somebody's going to bring up, well, we should tax that food. No, we should not. I don't believe in sin taxes on alcohol. None of that. The tax code should not be there to try to change our behavior.
Well, yeah, I mean, other than this is the one thing I could see on the health side people push back about the fair tax is in most states that do have the sales tax, their food is exempt.
Correct.
And
right.
The fair tax would then apply to all food items.
Yes.
But technically it's already there because all the employment taxes are.
Well, exactly. And here's where we get so out of whack on this whole idea. Again, it's when we start using the tax code to try to change people's behavior. To me, that is completely wrong. Build a nice, simple tax code. The fair tax works really well, has lots of advantages, and we're not really using anything in there to try to change people's behavior. I just think that that's part of the way our tax code got so screwed up, and it also strengthens the lobbyists. So now we have more and more lobbying around the tax code because, oh, well, we want an exemption because we do this, and just get rid of all that. Would be so much easier. But just Trump this time, it's like he's lost his mind around this whole tax thing.
Yeah, and I mean, I get it. It's, we're down to, 3 weeks from tomorrow?
I think so.
Think so?
Yeah.
Yeah, which maybe it's because I don't really listen to live radio or live TV, anything that has commercials anymore.
Right.
To me, this election cycle has almost been a non-issue to me as far as ads and campaign because I listen to podcasts and books, and I don't hear any of that stuff anymore. So
right. Yeah, when he first came out with the whole no tax on tips, within 10 seconds of hearing that, I thought that's a stupid idea. Then no tax on overtime. Oh, it's getting worse. The one I could probably go along with, said it before, because we never used to tax Social Security, and it seems like an overcomplication of the system. The government gives me money, and then they immediately take some of it back again. Come on, there's got to be a better way.
Tax on the tax money you're receiving.
Correct. So
that one, when you're receiving tax money, I don't understand why they tax it.
Why they tax it, right? And ultimately, everybody has the opportunity to benefit from that. Now, sure, somebody's going to die before they get Social Security. We can't help that. But when you say we're not going to tax tips, well, that rules out about 90% of the people. Well, we're not going to tax overtime. Well, there's a ton of people that don't get overtime, don't want it, don't work it. Then there's industries like ours that don't even use overtime pay, period. That was a really stupid idea. It just, and then he starts throwing out, well, we're going to bring back itemized deductions. But why? You were the one that got rid of them. Why are you bringing them back?
Yep.
I wish he would just spend his
here's the thing.
tax time on solidifying his original plan, because many of those rules have sunsetted.
Yeah. So the whole overtime tax,
Yeah.
so much more complicated this will end up becoming, because what is overtime? Is it over 40 hours a week, or is it over 8 hours a day?
Well, right. So now we have to start writing rules about this. Correct. And it's just the whole, like I said, I don't know. He handled the tax thing so good on his first time around. It was one of the first things he did. As soon as I saw the plan, I praised it. It was very small business friendly. It simplified things. And this whole talking point of, well, he gave the tax breaks to the billionaires. Where? Well, what tax break was there that really benefited billionaires in there? Lowering the corporate tax rate, but we certainly needed to do that. So this to me was a really, really small business friendly tax law change. One of the best I had seen. And I said that. I wish he would just stick to that plan and campaign on the fact that he's going to make sure all of that stuff sticks.
And I mean, I could see the argument of another side arguing with the 20% pass through on a business, because nobody else gets that anywhere else in the tax code unless you own a business. But
you know what? You know what? You know how I had justified that?
To take the risk.
Well, right. Right. The country runs on small business. So, but here's really the way I kind of justified that. You could say, well, nobody else gets that break. Well, nobody else has to pay both halves of their Social Security and Medicare tax either. And we've been burdened with that forever. Sure. And how is it that when I have a business and I have to go provide my own health insurance, I don't get to deduct it? Why not? It's a business expense.
Yeah.
So I just saw that 20% as kind of fixing some of the things they've screwed small business with over the years.
Because if they would just even talk about the fair tax, but it doesn't seem like that even makes it past.
No.
One person mentions it, and then the news, they rip it apart, and then they start skewing the numbers, and you never even have an honest conversation about it.
Yeah, I think the two laws that could really change our politics and would be a huge benefit, or two laws. One would be the fair tax. It takes away a lot of the lobbying power. And that would be a big one. And there's so many other reasons. But the other thing I think would improve our government would be term limits. The problem with both of these, I think they're both really good, but the politicians are smart enough to know that there's no way they're ever going to pass these. It takes away all their power and their wealth. And the people that have to pass them don't benefit from this.
Yep. And I mean, I know there is a way, I'd have to go back and do the research, that states can actually, isn't there like the governor's, something, it's like if 2/3 of the state legislators could pass a law that would make a federal law change or something.
Yeah,
I don't think it's ever even been used, but it's something that is in the books.
Yeah, there's a name for that too. Is that a constitutional Congress? Is that no, I don't think that's the right term.
That doesn't sound correct. But no, whatever it is, but they're, like I say, to the best of my knowledge, I've never even heard it.
I'm not sure if not sure if it's ever been used. Isn't it a way to change the Constitution itself?
Well, maybe an amendment.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. To
I
change
think-
an amendment,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The states could either add or
Right.
make an adjustment to an amendment. So yeah, and that is changing the Constitution. So
Yeah.
an amendment to the Constitution, yes. So,
Correct. Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
but I don't know that it's ever been used either. And the odds, when you look at how that would have to occur, the odds of it ever happening are pretty slim.
you know. So one last thing about politics is just in the last week, not seen a lot of them, but I really hadn't seen hardly any up until the last week. But Harris walls, posters or billboards or yard signs or on people's vehicles, and I mean, they were very, very rare before, but now I'm actually starting to see them. So
Yeah.
this election's going to be way closer than people think.
It's so hard to really get a handle on this one. I'll tell you why. The polls, we know the polls can be horribly flawed. The last couple of elections, they've been off on things. So you can't really depend on those. Polls make it look really now back and forth in a lot of ways, depending on what you're looking at. But it looks really close. Except, have you seen the one they call the Poly Market, which is a betting site where people bet on the outcome, but then they use the bets to predict. So it's not really a poll; it's a betting site. Have you seen that one?
I haven't looked at it, but I've heard it talked about. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm looking to see what if I can find the current right now. Where did I just saw this yesterday sometime? No, I can't find it again. A couple of weeks. Oh, here it is. And this is updated and it's new. A couple of weeks ago, this was pretty close to, like a lot of the other polls. But in the last couple of weeks, this one has really started to change. The Poly Market is showing Trump at 54.7 and Harris at 44.8. It's not even close.
Yeah, I don't know.
That makes you wonder.
Every time I see a video about Walz, which I realize, he's not the main one on the ticket, but we've had to deal with him in Minnesota for 6 years. So
yeah, well,
we know how crazy he is.
Yeah, you're a good source of information. You've been able to. Well, I mean, honestly, prior to him being nominated, if somebody would have asked me who the governor of Minnesota is, I wouldn't have known. I mean, I'd never heard of the guy. Wouldn't have even thought about it.
Unknown,
right? So I assume you're talking about his
J.D. Vance,
his latest hunting video.
I think, yeah, and I mean they do kind of exaggerate it in the video.
Right.
The way the angle and all that. I mean, he was having trouble loading his gun.
You know what though?
Pheasant hunting
and I do think they, of course,
they've been doing it his whole life.
Right. And I know they do it to, they're trying to gain, both sides are trying to gain points. They're doing it because they feel like they don't have the man vote. So they're hooked on this big, we're manly men thing they're trying to prove. But I read an article this morning and it was very well written. It wasn't overly critical. He didn't exaggerate all the trouble he had, but here's what he said. He said, and this guy grew up as a guide for pheasant hunting specifically. I mean, that's what he does. And he's done it most of his life. And he said, look, I deal with this on almost every guide I do. There's going to be somebody in the group who got all excited, went out and bought all new hunting gear and clothes and devices and guns, and they get out there and they are a mess. And he said, it's always the person I have to be most aware of. Pheasant hunting is actually pretty dangerous. Of all the types of hunting, That's the one that freaks me out the most. I've been deer hunting where, you'll get 3 or 4 people to drive and you'll get a couple other people. So the same kind of thing, but it's very different shooting at a deer than it is shooting at a pheasant. And even when you do that kind of hunting with deer, I'm not wild about it. Somebody is a lot more likely to get shot when you're doing that kind of stuff. But with pheasant, you've got this whole line of people driving, and then you've got another line of people, you're driving towards them. And the idea is when they get to that second line, the pheasant will fly because they have nowhere else to go. But if you've ever done this, the pheasant fly,
I have.
yeah, at like shoulder height a lot before they actually kind of climb and take off and get up. And you've got 2 lines of people now shooting at birds flying around at shoulder height. It's pretty dangerous. And that's what this guy said. He said, I always have to watch for that guy. I get it. We all have to learn sometime. He said, but I can always spot them. They always have the newest, cleanest equipment, and they're always nervous and they're always struggling. And that's what he looks like in that video. He just looks nervous and like he's struggling with it.
Yep. Yeah, and that's something else I've just learned. My youngest son and a couple of his buddies have kind of got into shooting trap and that. So 20 years ago, well, and when I was a kid, I was into it, but I reload shotgun shells.
Yeah.
And haven't done it in many, many years. And I guess since COVID, gunpowder is very hard to buy.
Is it really?
Like there's very little available anywhere.
Yeah, that always worries me.
It's been an issue since 2020.
That always worries me. There's no logical reason that I can think of why there should be a shortage of gunpowder.
No, and a couple of the most popular brands are not available at all.
Huh.
Which is
really
weird, but
that seems odd.
It sounds like it
Now,
might be, it's starting to get a little less bad, but it's, like I say, I haven't bought it in probably 20 years.
Yeah.
And the price is 5 times as expensive
I'm sure.
as the last time I bought it. But
well, ammunition is expensive.
That wasn't a shock. But
yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
when we went through the ammunition shortage.
Now, I did see one article. Well, it wasn't an article. It was just a post, and somebody was speculating. I don't know if they've solved this or not. According to this particular post, and the guy sounded like he really knew what he was talking about. They were in a wetland protected area. And no matter what you're hunting, I know there are different rules about hunting pheasant and geese and all kinds of different birds, how many shells you're allowed to have in the gun. I guess with pheasant, technically there isn't a 3-shell limit, except when you're in the wetlands protected area, then there's always a 3-shell limit no matter what you're hunting. And supposedly somebody said it looks like he loaded 5 shells into that gun.
Yeah, I don't know without looking that up, but I'm pretty sure too, once you get into wetland area, you can no longer use lead shot.
Oh, there are a lot of states that
going to vary state to state.
No, there are a lot of states that implemented that. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Because for pheasant and grouse hunting, we still use lead.
Right.
But any waterfall has to
Duck,
be steel.
right.
Well, they got
has to be steel. Yeah.
There's a lot of options nowadays, but
yeah. Yeah, so I don't know if they were making kind of a big deal about, oh, look, the party that wants all the gun controls is breaking their gun control laws.
Yeah, well, I don't. I guess I didn't pay attention to the background if that was truly wetland or not where he was at. But
yeah, I'm not sure
here
either.
in Minnesota, the most common pheasant hunting is usually in a cornfield.
Yeah, yeah,
that's the most popular, but.
Well, it's going to get interesting. Did I also see there was like a 3rd assassination attempt out at Coachella?
Oh, I haven't seen that, but wouldn't surprise me.
This one, I didn't have time to read it because I started reading it right before the show came on. But I'm going to go back and check. There supposedly they found some guy who had a fake VIP pass and a shotgun, and they were saying it's another assassination attempt. But then the guy himself went on and said, "No, that's not true." I don't even know what's going on with that one.
Well, I mean, it's the news. I don't believe anything they report anymore because
I know.
so I haven't talked to you since I think Wednesday. So Thursday morning, I got up really early and drove into Tampa behind the back of the hurricane, and
Oh yeah,
Tampa got actually not that bad. There were some things I was listening to that, like the storm surge and all that 2 weeks ago from Helene was worse than Milton.
right.
But that's because, coming up the shoreline, it's pushing when the Helene going north versus Milton moving east. The storm surge was on the south side of the eye.
Right.
And the fact that it actually had moved a little bit further south of Tampa, the north side was pulling, by the time the eye got on shore, the wind is pulling water back out of the bay.
Right.
So Tampa probably dodged a bullet there, but
yeah,
where I deliver, there was some flooding.
Yeah, I'll bet. Well, I was watching OP Live, that live cop show over the weekend, and several of their departments are in Florida. They have Daytona Beach, Indian River County. Several departments in Florida are part of that show, and almost every single department at one point during the night you saw them in flooded areas. I mean, there must be a lot of flooding.
Yep, a lot of rain, and I mean, there was a lot of rain 2 weeks ago, which Florida can handle rain more than once you get further inland, but there's still a limit.
Yeah, there is. So. I think Harold helped us out here. Convention of States.
Yep, that sounds correct.
That's the term. Thanks, Harold. Yeah, I knew there was a term for it, and I'm pretty sure that's right. Convention of States.
Nope.
All right. We'll cut you loose. I'm going to grab another call here. Let's go to Connecticut. Tom, welcome.
Yeah, hey Kevin. Yeah, it was a convention of states. I think they're only about 4 states away from being able to call one, but they'll never call it because they're a bunch of rhino lying politicians.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Bastards. I get so frustrated. And then Trump over the Trump one not tax overtime. I think we ought to just vote for Kamala. It just makes more sense. You kill me sometimes, man. You kill me. Like, you probably talked 5 people into not voting for Trump now.
He should.
Might have been the difference. I don't know why he does that shit.
That's what you know me. I'm not. I can't ignore that kind of stuff, and I'm not going to be so partisan as to act like it doesn't matter because it's Trump. It does matter. That this is a horrible way to just throw out these willy-nilly tax law changes. That's not how this works.
No, it's not how any of this works.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I get it, but man, deep breath.
I
couple more weeks. You know what's funny though? You think pheasant hunting? Okay, I want you put on your bucket list to go opening day quail season around Palm Springs area. You want to talk about dangerous, bro? No, it's only it's only about like 8. It's only about 8 shots. But if you don't get peppered with some 8 shot, I'm telling you, then you really didn't have fun. Well, because you should see, dude, they're swinging shotguns around. You know how fast quail are, and then they fly like waist high, and it's just you just can't describe it.
No, I get it, and it is. I'm not a big fan of that kind of group hunting, and with birds, it's like I said, it's even worse. And you're right. I'm not even sure how grouse exist, though. They are some of the dumbest birds I have ever seen.
Just run right on the right. Yeah.
So I
thought
I always talk about the show alone.
They don't taste good. That's why.
Yeah. I talk about the show
That's what they
Alone.
say them is they taste like crap.
On this last episode of Alone, they were north of the Arctic Circle. There were quite a few grouse around. One of the guys, and he was from Labrador, I think, far east Canada, one of those areas up there. So he had that weird accent. He was really hard to listen to. But the guy had an incredible skill. He was catching grouse, and if I had to think, I bet he caught 3 to 5 grouse throughout the whole show, probably around 5. He would catch them with a snare, but he would hold the noose in his, he would make like a little noose, and he would just slowly walk up to one and lower the noose down over its head and just yank on it. What a stupid bird. The first time I saw him doing this, he's heading towards this bird with this noose in his hand. And I'm like, what an idiot. He's never going to be able to catch that thing. And sure enough, he just walks over there, slips it right over its head and kills it.
Yeah, sage grouse are the second cousins of the dodo bird.
Man, it's a wonder they're still around.
Well, nobody, like I say, they don't taste very good, and they're pretty far north. Yeah, I didn't know that's why the dodo bird went extinct until the other day. They were just so friendly. Friendly. They just walk right up to you, and you just knock them in the head. That's pretty shitty, really.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of
the guy at the Trump rally. Oh, go ahead.
Since we're talking about birds and bird hunting, and we were talking about pheasant earlier. Do you remember growing up? It was always on the cartoons. What was like the really expensive exotic dinner on cartoons? Do you remember? It was a very specific dish.
It was pheasant. Wasn't it pheasant? It was pheasant or
But there was a specific way they served it even.
Oh, I don't remember.
It was pheasant under glass.
Oh, under glass.
Remember that?
Yeah, under glass. Yeah, like that mattered.
I know.
Right. Yeah.
But that was it was always in the cartoons. Somebody would always be eating pheasant under glass. That was like the most expensive food, was the way they made that sound.
Yeah, some king or queen somewhere.
Yeah.
That was their dish.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're like, oh man.
Yeah, whatever happened to that?
Picked up on that.
I think I'm gonna do a dinner party, and I'm gonna serve pheasant under glass and see if anybody gets it.
Right. Hey, so I'll sort of off topic. Since that gout came back, I said, screw it, I'm just going carnivore 100%. But now, eggs should be okay, right?
Should
and then
be.
I like to have a little cheese on eggs.
Oh yeah.
But is there vegetable oil and cheese?
Is there vegetable oil and cheese? There shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be, right? Okay.
Definitely not.
Getting pretty quality cheese.
Now,
It doesn't say it on there.
Oh
no.
No.
I know the American slices there is.
Correct. There are cheese-like products
Substitute.
like Velveeta.
Right.
Yeah. Velveeta.
Velveeta.
Well, here's it almost makes me embarrassed to be an American. Is this really the cheese we want to put out into the world and call it American cheese?
Oh, exactly right. And I thought until I was about 21 that Velveeta was fish bait. I really did. I swear to God, no one you would really eat that. You know what I mean? I really did. I thought it was fish. That's what we just used for fishing because it was cheap, easy to put on the hook and wham,
There you go.
Oh my God, it's horrible. The dude over at the Trump rally claimed he was, a huge Trump fan. He had handmade license plates on his SUV, and then, like you said, forged press pass. But he had 2 or 3 different passports with different names on them. And being California, boom, out on bail, $5,000. I'm like, well, wouldn't you want to at least waterboard that guy for a little bit until you get
Something is odd about the whole
semi-truth out of
story.
him.
Something just, if it really was an assassination attempt, are we really that blasé about these now? Oh, yeah, there was another one. I can remember a time when assassination attempts on presidents were kind of big news. They don't seem to be big news
Kind of
anymore.
real big news.
Yeah. That now they just seem to be kind of, oh, yeah, there was another one. I'm like, what? Another one? And then I go to read it, and every article I read is so bizarre, I can't figure out what the hell happened.
Well, you want to hear something that's crazy? So my dad had a real estate office in Southern California when I was growing up. And then, so back in the, what was it, the 70s then, when that woman tried to assassinate Nixon. Now, she, as it turns out, worked as a secretary for my dad for like 15 minutes, you know? And he goes like, this was a little bit nutty, man. And so he let her go, you know? And this is years before. And so years later, so he's got the FBI at his place because he was a broker and he owned the place. And well, they had their thumb up his ass for a long time just for having her work there years before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, unbelievable. I forget her name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and then well, but back to the taxes on overtime thing in Oregon. So when I worked for OD, I started on the dock, and then went through the training program and got my CDL. I don't know, this is about 14 years ago, something like that. But when we were on the dock, because they hauled just the right amount, like I don't even know what the amount had to be, but we didn't hardly haul much of it, of agricultural products. Being on the dock, they got away with paying us. They didn't have to pay us overtime in Oregon until after 60 hours a week or 12 hours a day. So just to throw another hitch in it, then it'd have to go by states. I always thought that was probably pretty illegal for Old Dominion, a big company like that, to pull that card. I always wanted to go back and say, hey, you know what? I think we'll take you to court on that one, because that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was mostly totes that would go out to the marijuana growers when that first became a law there that you can grow your own marijuana.
Yeah.
So it was so they called that agricultural too. I'm like, wait a minute, there's a couple different, this isn't adding up.
Just the way he's doing this, he just randomly seems to, and it's the way he talks. I get it. And I've talked about it before, but he just randomly throws out these ideas. And to me, this time it is just pandering. I mean, you can't just say we're not going to tax overtime. It's way more complicated than that. And it's a stupid idea.
Well, but like you say, if that comes, if that's the precursor for the flat or fair tax, and I don't care which one it is.
Oh, I care a lot. Here's why.
Yeah.
Where I am still very skeptical that we would ever get a major tax law change like that, period. But if we happen to get one, we're only going to get one in my lifetime. If they pass the flat tax, it will be there for a long, long time. So if we're going to do this, let's do it right. And the fair tax has so many advantages over the flat tax.
Yeah, well, I didn't even go into studying them because I know it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Because our government is living basically the cash that comes in every day or every week from payroll taxes. Payroll taxes. That's what they're living off of. So it's I just don't see it. It would be many years and a lot of sewage flushes. So the first reason I called, because you talked to the guys over at Garmin. Now I'm in Connecticut, and I'm hauling hazardous materials over to Pontiac, Michigan. Actually, it's probably something to do with paint because it's for an automotive place over in Pontiac. And I mean, I'm in North Haven, Connecticut. So I put my Garmin on there that I want to go to Pontiac with hazmat. And so it sends, so the only option that I have that it gives me is to go through Connecticut. I mean, go through Canada. I'm like, well, so I went on my little, avoid ferries, avoid, tolls. It's got a little list of stuff, but it doesn't have like avoid Canada on there. I haven't been allowed in Canada since like the 80s. You know what I mean? They pretty much, so they pretty much kicked me out of there. I'm like, shit. Okay, so can't go to Canada. So that's not good. And I know I do get down to Mexico where every once in a while it'll give me an option of going through Mexico too. But so shouldn't they just like have a simple button like avoid Canada and avoid Mexico on there? So next time you talk to those guys, and this is a diesel, the Garmin diesel, the one I complain about all the time, just like just coming here to Connecticut, so I followed my Google map, and at the very end, I could have went 50 miles following Garmin, and then I followed Google, and then it rerouted me once I went past that one turn that Garmin wanted me to make, and then it reconfigured and it said okay, and sent me the same way that Google was sending me. So I don't know why the darn thing always wants to send me the long way, but I don't remember where those stupid tunnels are in Pennsylvania. Is it Pennsylvania or Ohio? The ones you can't take hazmat to. I don't get on the. I hate the East Coast. I feel like a duck out of water.
I can't think of any tunnels in Ohio, but there's tons of tunnels in Pennsylvania.
The ones in the mountains. Oh, yeah. Okay, so the mountains of Pennsylvania.
Oh, wait a minute.
Is that on I-80 or 70?
Well, I could name all kinds of tunnels around Pittsburgh. There's some right around Pittsburgh itself. I think that's 376, or there's a weird one over there that has a bunch of 13.6 tunnels. I know because I had an overheight trailer once and I had to go around them. Then on 80, there's tunnels.
I think there is. Yeah, now, I don't remember if those are the hazmat tunnels or not.
No, and you're not thinking of the tunnels in Ohio on 77 going into, is that Virginia from West Virginia? There's a tunnel there on 77.
No. It was either 70 or 80. It was either 70 or 80 if you wanted to take it all the way.
76.
And learn that the hard way.
You don't
because that's quite the once you get up there, it's quite the detour to get around that.
Well, if you're talking about 76, which is the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and Sarah just sent
maybe that's it
to verify, there are 3 tunnels on there that prohibit hazmat, but there are routes that are pretty quick to get around them too.
Okay, that's 76. Okay, Sarah, thank you, Sarah.
Well, the weird thing, it's 76 and 80 in Ohio, and then Pennsylvania kind of switch. It's very confusing if you don't go through there a lot.
Yeah, that's why I try to stay
in
west.
Ohio, Route 80 is the turnpike, but then and 76 is just an interstate. But then when you get into Pennsylvania, 76 becomes the turnpike and 80 becomes an interstate.
Yeah, it's turnpike meaning toll road.
Turnpike meaning toll road, correct.
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah, they can pay the toll. I've got the pre-pass. I'm not worried about that. I just want to get there as fast as I can, but like, oh my gosh. Thank you for that. And then thank you, Sarah. I'm going to try to run out 80 and see what they say. So I got I broke my Rely On blood glucose monitor out. the other day when I went on carnivore. So I call it carnivore. It's carnivore with eggs, so it's eggivore.
Yeah. No, carnivore includes eggs. Carnivore includes
does it?
all animal products. So dairy, because it comes from an animal, is considered carnivore. Eggs are considered carnivore.
Geez, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so carnivore. So I'm like on day 5 now, and so I did my blood glucose in the morning about 5 days ago, and then I hit was in the morning 148, and thought, yep, sure enough, pre-diabetic for sure. And then hit it this morning, my first 100. First thing when I got up, and then I don't know if you've ever if you use one of those rely-ons, but have you ever hit error 4 where it says not enough blood on the strip? But my strips are probably 2 years old. I wonder if the strips are bad or
the strip should have an expiration date on them.
They should or shouldn't?
Should.
Oh, okay. It's probably the strips. Probably need to get new strips then.
Yeah, strips do expire, and they should have an expiration date on the strip itself.
Oh, on the strips. Okay, on the strip itself. Okay, I have to put my glasses on. Can't hardly read any of this stuff nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, when they say the strip itself, it's usually on the individual packets that the strip's in.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'll look on the little bottle it comes in. Yeah, those things are. And then I was going to get more anyway, and I look online, and then so I had my uric acid tester.
Yeah.
And it's the one that you told me to get, the whichever one that was. Which one was that you told me to get? So I went to buy more strips for that thing, and they don't make them anymore. They don't make the darn things anymore.
Really?
For the e-burst,
yeah,
or whatever it is.
Huh.
Yeah. Have you run into that?
No, because I haven't tried to use mine in a long time, and I probably have strips left somewhere.
Yeah, then that's just like sort of like a con. I don't, or maybe you have to get a prescription nowadays. Now they have the little strips where you can dip them in urine. I saw, but I didn't see any strips to run through any type of meter now.
Yeah.
At all. So I wonder if it's a prescription thing.
I wouldn't think so.
But
I'll go check.
Yeah, that's odd. Anyway, so that's what I ran up against.
All right.
Okay, I think that's all I got, brother. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for the call. We're going to wrap it up for today. We will see you back here tomorrow for the Power Hour. Let me see. Do I have any announcements today? Doesn't look like it. So we will see you back here tomorrow. Be safe, be profitable, be fit and healthy. Always do the hard work and master the journey.